Get social with us. Follow us on Instagram at Goodtaste TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Good Taste for the Soul. I'm Tangi Patton. Do you believe in miracles? Well, no matter how you answer that question, there's a beautiful, mysterious staircase in Santa Fe, New Mexico that will make you wonder. It's called the Miraculous Staircase. You'll find it over at a little chapel called Loretto Chapel, about a block off the square. The staircase was built in the late 1800s in a perfect helix design. Think of a DNA strand. It makes two complete 360-degree turns, is 20 feet tall, and has no center support. No one knows who built it for sure or how. The manager of the chapel there has been there some 30 years, so I stopped by his booth to talk to him on a recent visit to find out more about the staircase, the chapel, what he knew about it after being there all these years. Well, what he told me about that mysterious staircase was so moving and so fascinating, I wanted to share it with all of you. I want to welcome you to Good Taste for the Soul because I've met you twice. And the first time, I believe, was maybe a year ago at Loretto Chapel. And taking the time to stop and visit with you, for me personally, made the entire visit so much more meaningful. So I'm so glad our viewers get to see you and hear your story and the incredible knowledge you have about that chapel. Tell us, first of all, about Loretto Chapel. It's quite historic there in Santa Fe, right?
Yes, I'll tell you about Loretto Chapel. Loretto Chapel was built by a French architect, Projectus Millet, who was hired by Archbishop Lamy to come here with his dad, Anton Millet, to build St. Francis Cathedral. They worked on the cathedral for 4 years, and they had problems with the foundation, and they had to stop. And the dad, Anton Millet, became blind and had to go back to Paris. And while they were waiting to decide what to do with the cathedral, the Sisters of Loretto asked Projectus Millet if he could build their chapel. And he agreed. He decided to pattern this chapel after Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. Sainte-Chapelle was built in the Middle Ages by King Louis IX of France to house the relics he gathered during the Crusades. Now, Sainte-Chapelle has a lower chapel meant for the peasants of the day, and it has two stone circular staircases that lead up to his chapel. And it's my belief that he wanted to put in a circular staircase here in Loretto Chapel for that reason. But he worked on the chapel for 5 years, between 1873 and 1878. And apparently he couldn't find anyone to come all the way from France in 1877 to help him put in the staircase, because he completed the chapel in 1878 with no access to the balcony. There was no staircase.
So you had essentially a balcony. You can kind of show us with your camera a little bit.
Let's see if I can do that. I'm going to step away and go to the front. You can see my screen, the balcony
it's coming
there.
in.
You see,
Yes,
and the staircase
exactly.
and the balcony. So the balcony was in place, but there was no staircase. And
so they had no way to get to it.
They had no way to get to it. And anyway, a year later, in early 1879, he died. And when he died, he still had not put in the staircase. So Mother Superior, Mother Magdalena, asked the local carpenters if they would go ahead and build a staircase. But they failed. They didn't know how to build a circular staircase. And when they failed,
well, not only the circular staircase was a problem, but the chapel itself, just to give viewers perspective, if they haven't been, is narrow. And
yes,
there's not the circular staircase makes the most sense because of the width, and a regular staircase would have been too bulky and take up too much room in the small chapel.
That's why I think the sisters asked the local carpenters to build a circular one, because I believe the architect had mentioned that was his goal. And that's why they didn't even try to build a switchback or an ordinary staircase. So anyway, if you're following my reasoning, that's why the sisters had a great problem. They didn't have the staircase, and the local carpenters couldn't build it, so they decided to solve their problem by turning to prayer. And they said a 9-day novena to St. Joseph. He's the patron of carpenters, and they had dedicated the building of this chapel to St. Joseph. And on the last day of their novena, a strange man rode in off the desert on a donkey and offered to build the staircase. So they were overjoyed. They took it as an answer to their prayer, and they hired him on a handshake, which was common for the time. And he insisted upon working inside this chapel with the doors shut, never allowing anyone into the chapel while he was working on the staircase. And according to a document that I read published by the sisters in 1933, I just want to say that there would have been sisters alive in 1933 who would have been alive at the time of the building of the chapel. So they could have verified their information. So I consider it as firsthand information.
Yeah.
And in that pamphlet, they said that he worked in here for only 3 months, and then he vanished without being paid. Then the pamphlet said they went to the only lumberyard in town to at least pay for the materials. And the lumberyard told the sisters that he never got any materials from them at all. And the sisters recall when he came in off the desert, he didn't bring any wood or materials. And no one in the village ever saw him bringing wood into the chapel during the 3 months he was locked up in here. So the sisters were left with 2 great mysteries. Where did he come from? No one knew. He was hired in a handshake and vanished. Where did the wood come from? No one knew. And in their piety, the sisters and the villagers of Santa Fe came to the conclusion, well, he must have come from heaven. Now, the only lead they had was his description. And they said he was an older man with a gray beard. And now, when our Lord Jesus is reported to have appeared to people, whether Catholic, Protestants, or even Muslims, when they describe him, they say he looks the way he did at about the age 33 before his crucifixion. And if you ever see these YouTube stories of people being locked in an accident in the middle of nowhere, you know what I mean, and someone comes to help them, and they go to thank them, and they vanish, and everyone in these YouTube stories say that they were convinced angels came to help them. And the only description they have in common of all of them is they say that they're young, strapping young men. So apparently that's the way angels appear to people. So because this man was elderly, that's why the sisters in their piety came to the conclusion that it was St. Joseph himself, whom they had said the novena to, that was sent from heaven to build the staircase for them from Jesus. So that story about St. Joseph building the staircase, the sisters passed down in their schools for the last 147 years all around the country.
Well, there's so much more than, there are lots of miracles and things purporting to be miracles over time that are recorded. There's a lot to this story. I mean, clearly there's something special about this chapel and that staircase. There's a lot to this story that is also documentable. The first being the generational knowledge. The nuns in the 30s were alive when this was going on. And second, you've got a fascinating story about the wood used on that staircase. Clearly it didn't come from the local lumberyard. No one saw him bringing wood in.
Well, we get to the second thing, part of my story. I became a curator here in 1990. I was a very young man, and it was my first management job. And I was rather insecure. But anyway, the last manager told me that a study had been done of the wood at the University of Oregon, and she said the wood did not match up with any other on Earth. Well, it was my first day as manager. My instinct was to call the University of Oregon and verify it. Well, I didn't know what department to talk to. And again, being insecure, and it was my first time as manager, I was embarrassed that they may say, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy?" I had already worked for the company in the hotel for 14 years before I became manager here, and I never heard of anything about that. But that sparked in me a desire to solve the mystery of our staircase. And 5 years later, a U.S. naval scientist came to visit us, and he offered to research the wood, so I jumped at the chance. Now, I had been manager now for 5 years, so I felt more secure, and upon my own authority, I pried out a piece of wood from the inner stringer and gave it to him.
What is the inner stringer? Can you show us on the
Yes, I'll
staircase
show
or
you.
point to?
The stringer is the curly part on the inside and outside of the staircase. So I'm going to try to get closer to the staircase here. And, okay, I don't know. Let's see if I can get this in my screen here. Okay, that's the underneath.
This is the whole thing.
Okay.
Under there,
This
like
is the
I'm showing
underneath
the.
the stair. Oh, this right here is the inner stringer. It's the inner
Okay.
curly part that you see. I'm looking straight up the center of the staircase to the top, and it's the inner
Yes.
curly step part where the steps are connected to. And the outer
Gotcha. So
stringer,
that's
the
where the
steps are
sample came.
connected to here. You see, I'm touching the outer stringer. So anyway,
So the sample came from that portion
yes.
in the
So
staircase.
I took the sample from the top of the inner stringer, about 3 feet from the top, because there was a crack there. And I pried out a piece that was 3/4 of an inch in size. And he studied that wood for 15 months. He determined right away it was a form of spruce, a softwood, but he said the cells were so dense, tight, and square that it gave it the strength of a hardwood. He emphatically told me it was the perfect wood for the job because the flexibility of the spruce gives the structure the ability to be flexible like a suspension bridge, and the density of the cell structure gives it the ability to hold great weight. But he said for the cells to develop the way they had, quote, the wood must have come from a tree that had grown very, very slowly in a very cold place, like over 10,000 feet or from Alaska. And the closest he found to it was a tree that grows only in Alaska, but it was not the same. So as a scientist, he had a right to name his discovery. And I think I mentioned already, he worked at China Lake. And as a naval scientist, he named it Joseph after the legend of St. Joseph, easily after himself, his own last name, so he must have been very confident of his findings, and Picea, the subspecies of spruce it fell into, Joseph Easley Picea. Well, that study was completed in 1997, and we sell his pamphlet that he gave us at that time in our gift shop. But as you know, on the internet developed between 97 and 2000, and naysayers on the internet for the last 25 years have tried to debunk his study. And the only thing they could come up with was saying that the core sample of wood that I gave him, 3/4 of an inch, was too small for him to do the study. Well, I just found out about 8 months ago, Forrest Easley wrote an autobiography. So we ordered it on Amazon, and you can too. Forrest Easley autobiography on Amazon for $18. Now, it was about his family history. To be honest, I could care less. But in the back, he put an appendix in which he debunked the debunkers. And he said he had access to the most powerful, as working at China Lake, he had access to the most powerful microscopes available. He was able to blow up each cell more than 450 times. And he said it was very easy for him to compare it with all other spruce on Earth. Now, in his appendix, he went into more detail than he did in the pamphlet he gave us in 1997. In the appendix, he said, it fits between two subspecies of Picea spruce, Picea citizensis and Picea engelmanni, but it was not one or the other. It fits between the two and deserves to be understood as a totally new subspecies of spruce, unlike any other on Earth. So literally, where does the wood come from scientifically? Nobody knows. That's our first
Well, even
scientific mystery.
geographically, you know
What?
what I mean? Even geographically. I mean, scientifically,
Geographically?
it doesn't exist.
Now,
And then,
when he said it had to come from a tree that grew very slowly in a cold place, you know what that reminded me of? When I was a young man, I learned about Howard Hughes, who built the Spruce Goose in the 1930s. It was built like a World War II bomber, all out of spruce, and he got his spruce from the most farthest reaches part of the United States. Again, for the same reason, the flexibility of the spruce, the slow growth
Mhm.
means density in the cells, and he used that in his spruce goose, and that reminded me of the wood that must have been used in our staircase, some kind of wood like it. But as I
Yeah,
say, Forrest Easley said this wood doesn't match up with any other on Earth.
it's fascinating. The staircase itself is beautiful. And when just walking in, even if you knew nothing about the story behind it, it's a stunning staircase. And engineers for generations have been marveling at the design, right? I mean, there's no center
Absolutely.
post.
Yes, you see, it's a double helix there, and two full turns. Um, and that's the second scientific thing I like to talk about is uh, Um, working for the company for the last 48 years, I've never met a single engineer who's been able to tell me the weight bearing capacity of the staircase without tearing it apart. Now, one time an engineer came in and told me he did understand it. So as politely as I could, I said, which wasn't easy because I grew up in New York City. We New Yorkers tend to be very blunt with people. As politely as I could, I said, "Sir, could I have your business card so I could share it with the engineers at Sandia Labs? They don't fully understand it, and you could explain it to them." And he got red-faced and embarrassed, and he said he didn't understand it and walked away. So no
Oh,
engineer
my.
has been able to tell me the weight-bearing capacity of the staircase without tearing it apart. And C, well, we've had staircase builders from all over the United States come here. And in 2016, each man was a CEO of their own company that specialized in building circular wooden staircases. And they asked me to give them a lecture. And during my lecture, I asked them, how do you do it? And they told me they take hardwood and glue it together. The process is called lamination. But our staircase is made from at least 94 pieces of wood. See, there are 9 seams on the outside stringer and 7 seams on the inside stringer. And there are 33 steps and 33 rises. That's where we come to at least 94 pieces of wood. And it's just held together with fine wooden joinery. Now, what I mean by that is, I'm 77 years of age. When my mother was born the 12th of 12 children, very late in her dad's life, and I was born late in my mother's life, in her life. So, believe it or not, my grandfather uh, was making furniture in the 1880s. At the same time this
Whoa.
staircase was built, he used no glue, no nails, no screws, just fine wooden joinery, and the furniture exists to this day. So that's why I believe in the 1880s, this technology, if you would, was more commonly known among woodworkers. So he just used fine wooden joinery to put this together, no glue. I know that for a fact because the staircase is flexible.
When it comes to Mexican food restaurants in San Antonio, a few names come to mind. Los Barrios, La Hacienda de los Barrios, and Viola's Ventanas. All are family owned and operated local restaurants. These restaurants have been featured on Good Morning America, The Today Show in New York, along with many other national and international programs. The Barrios family have been in the restaurant business for more than 50 years in San Antonio. Come join the fun and become part of the family. Well, I read accounts when you walk. I mean, no one can walk on it now,
No,
but
no.
back when they could, there was a spring action, right?
Well,
A
I
sensation.
was years ago. I was allowed to go on the staircase, and I emotionally felt that I was not walking on solid ground. And I was here for a wedding one time. We used to allow bride and grooms and photographers to go up the staircase. And this photographer, who was built like a linebacker, bound up the stairs to get the photograph he wanted at the wedding, and the staircase moved like a spring. So that confirmed to me that it was not just my emotional feeling when I walked on it that it was not solid ground, but he proved to me it wasn't. So I know for sure it's flexible, which proves there's no glue, otherwise it wouldn't be flexible. And these staircase builders, at the end of my lecture, I asked them, not one of those 120 American companies said that they could reproduce the staircase the way it was built. Not one said they could do it.
Wow. And the railing on this was added later. I think that's something we probably should mention.
The banisters were added later.
Yes.
The first 8 years, the staircase was used without banisters. I'm going to see if I can show you this here. Here's a photograph, if I can get it there. Forget the light shining on it, but you can see it has no banisters in that photograph. That's a simulation.
Can you imagine walking up? Because that's a pretty tall distance.
Oh, going up those 20 feet on a staircase, and the steps are only 2.5 feet wide, without banisters would have been very scary for the sisters. And they used it for 8 years. Now, I personally think one of the sisters or students got hurt, and they hired a Mr. Philip Hesh to add the banisters.
Wow.
And he added the banisters, and by drilling holes in the stringer and attaching them with round wooden dowels, and then he scarred the underneath of the staircase. You see, originally you could see the bottom of the steps. So he put lattice work on the bottom and plastered it with a lime plaster, and it was just painted to look like wood. So you see, as you look at the staircase, the underneath there, okay, that's shining from the sunlight, that is a lime plaster mixed with horsehair painted to look like wood. And so it's not wood in itself. So that's why
they did a beautiful job with that.
That was a beautiful job.
What
They
are
had
some
great
of the
skill. I'm sorry?
Oh yeah, no, it's stunning. The staircase is just stunning. What are some? I'm curious because thousands come there every year to see it. It even multiple times. I mean, I've seen it several times too. What are some of the stories? Are there any stories that stand out to you? Maybe reactions that people have had that you didn't expect?
Well, we have guests. I can't tell you how many times guests. Now, this is a secular museum now, deconsecrated as a chapel, but I'm impressed by the number of guests that come out and visit me at the host stand and say that they felt they had a great spiritual experience and sense that they were in a great holy place. So there's, if you would, an aura about the place that touches many people. Some people come out in tears, they're moved so much. But if you don't mind, I want to tell you finally about one other scientific piece of information, and that I find very fascinating. A world-renowned physicist, David Tomarek, came to visit us in 2017. I call him world-renowned because he's in demand to give lectures to other physicists all over the world. And he is the head of a physics department at one of the major universities in the United States. And he came here, he was so excited, I let him measure and examine the staircase. And David Tomarek got together with another physicist from South Africa, and they wrote a scientific paper that he emailed to me. And I read the email. Heaven help me, it was 95% calculus and physics, two subjects I've never taken. So he was kind enough to explain to me in layman's terms. He said that they concluded our staircase is patterned after the natural design of a DNA strand. And therefore, it has the strength and integrity of the DNA strand in and of itself. They said the strength does not come from the floor or the coil loft, but from the structural design itself. And somehow using calculus, don't ask me how, they extrapolated that our staircase, despite its age, it's 147 years old, would hold a 220-pound person on every single step. There are 33 steps, that's more than 3 tons of weight. Now, that's something we don't want to test because we want to preserve the staircase for posterity. And
Right.
so, anyway, those are the scientific mysteries.
But there are photos. There's a photo of a lot of, I don't know if they were students or nuns standing on it, from
Yes,
maybe the 50s or
there's a
something.
photo
But it was full.
there's a photo. This photo here was taken December 1959. Let's see if I can get it in your picture, showing 20 senior high school girls standing on it. And that's more than 2 tons of weight. And it was used that way for 90 years until the school closed in 1968.
Wow.
And then when the school closed, this became a private museum. And you know the rest of the story there. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about the supernatural event that took place here. In 2002, as manager, I would come in every morning through the gift shop and then go into the chapel, turn on the lights, light some candles, come out and get the money ready for the employees to come in. Well, this one Monday morning, I came in and there were 6 crosses on the floor. See, we sell all kinds of crosses in our gift shop, and the gift shop is about, I'm guessing 60 feet by 20 feet, and they were all on one wall, our north wall at the time. And I came in this one morning on a Monday, and there were 6 crosses on the floor in the middle of the gift shop, and none of them are broken. So I picked them up and put them back on the wall, which was about 12 feet away, and I thought to myself, well, maybe the children of the owners are playing a practical joke on me. And so I just forgot about it. And the next Tuesday morning, I came in the same thing. So I picked them up, put them on the walls, and it went on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I was off on weekends. And then when I came back the next Monday, it was still going on. So by the end of the second week, I said to myself, the children are not doing this. I tried to be a devout Catholic, and in my worldview, we Catholics believe in the state of purgatory, where souls are purified before they can enter the gates of heaven. And I personally became convinced, it must be a soul in purgatory that's doing this. Well, I have a confession to make to you and to everyone. At the time, my heart was more hardened than it is now. And I had this thought, well, that's just between God and the soul. And I won't worry about it. But if I was a devout Catholic, I would say, I need to pray about this or pray for the person or a mass is said for them. But anyway, so that was my attitude, and it continued to happen week after week, month after month. Now, the other manager who worked on weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, he comes from a different tradition. He was a retired Methodist minister, so purgatory was not in his worldview. And he went around telling everyone, wind is blowing them down, and that's why they're
inside.
I know I tried not to laugh because there are no windows inside the gift shop. And someone must have pointed that out to him as an impossibility because he changed the story and said, the wind is hitting the outside of the building and forcing the crosses to fall. Well, there were always only 6 crosses, and they were always in the middle of the gift shop. If they fell, they would have been at the foot of the wall. So anyway, after 2 years, now this time, I've always loved science fiction, and there was a program on TV called The Ghost Whisperer about a woman that had a fireman as a husband, and she would help souls pass on from this life to the next. And I was touched by one of the shows. I don't even know why, but it really pinched my conscience. So the next morning, I decided to do something about it. So that next morning, I came in. Again, it was a Monday morning, and again, there were 6 crosses on the floor. So for the first time, though, I spoke out loud. And I said, if there's a soul here and you would like for me to have a mass said for you, just leave 1 cross. So I put the 6 crosses up on the wall, and I thought to myself, well, let's see what happens tomorrow. I went into the gift shop. I left the gift shop, went to the chapel, and turned on the lights and lit some candles, as I always do, which takes me about 7 minutes. And I came back into the gift shop, and there was 1 cross on the floor, right in the middle of the gift shop.
Was anyone else there?
No. I come in by myself. In the morning, I'm all by myself opening the shop. No one else. So in those 7 minutes while I was in the gift shop, this soul took the cross off the wall, put it on the floor, and when I saw that, I said myself, I have to keep my promise. So at lunchtime, I went over to the cathedral, and I had a mass said for a soul at Loretto Chapel. I don't know who the person was. And when you do that, you often are given a little card you might be able to give to family members and let them know that you had a mass said. So the cathedral gave me that card, and that evening when I closed the gift shop down, again, I was all by myself. Everyone had already gone home. I spoke out loud for the second time, and I said, I kept my promise. I had a mass said for you, and I put that card down right where that 1 cross had been earlier that morning. It never happened again. Never again. Wow. So I'm convinced that the mass was said, and his soul, whoever it was, soul went immediately to heaven and was freed. And you know, I must admit, when I pass on from this life, there's going to be someone I have to apologize to that I waited 2 years to have a mass said for them. But I've learned my lesson.
Well, I'm curious in hearing you talk about that. How has your walk with Christ, your faith changed since you started working there? It's been some 30 some odd years.
It really has changed because I was more of a nominal Catholic when I first started to work here. But over the years, my spiritual life grew, my prayer life grew, and I became a third order secular Carmelite in 1998, and that's really helped me. The discipline of the Carmelite life with the prayer and meditation and everything has really transformed my life. So again, over the years, I've become much closer to Christ in my faith.
Well,
and working here has been a key to it. I know that.
Well, it definitely is a special place. If anyone hasn't been to Loretto Chapel in Santa Fe, it is so worth the visit. And so people have perspective if they haven't been there. The famous church you see on all the photos of Santa Fe, that's the St.
That's St. Francis Cathedral, which is across the street. Yes.
And it's beautiful, but it's just down maybe half a block. There's a hotel
it's
called
Catty
Loretto,
Corner, if you would. It's 1 block away, Catty Corner to it. So it's not on the exact same street. But yes.
That's how we find it. And I just want to encourage everyone to stop by and say hello to Richard and hear these incredible accounts.
And before I retire, I plan to continue working. I work Monday through Friday, and I'm there all through the mornings, and I usually leave at 2 or 2:30. So if you want to see me, come in during the week in the morning, and I can share with you personally some of these stories I've just shared with you today.
It was such a true blessing to meet you, sir, and I'm really grateful that you were on the podcast with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope you come back and visit us again.
Oh, I will, and I'll know to come in the morning, so I'd be sure and catch you.
Thank you. All right. God bless.
Thanks,
Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Same to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed hearing about that beautiful staircase. Richard Lindsley is the gentleman's name you just met. And I just thought he was fascinating. If you go to the chapel, by all means, go in the morning because that's when he's there and visit with him. He has so much knowledge and he's done a ton of research on this chapel. I'm not Catholic, but I don't think that matters. I do believe in miracles. And I also love it when maybe that's the human in me, when there's also evidence to back up parts of a miraculous happening. And in this story, you do have that. If any of you read Lee Strobel's books, you know he talks all the time about generational knowledge, and that being, people alive during the time historical notes were recorded. And this staircase has that. There were some nuns alive when they were recording documents about this in the 50s, I believe, that would have been alive when the staircase was built in the late 1800s. So either way, it's a beautiful story. Something special happened there. Folks from all over the world travel to see it. And I hope if you go to Santa Fe, you'll take a few minutes out of your day to pop over there and take a look. I hope it brightens your world as much as it has mine. Have a great day, everyone. Cheers to good taste.
Get social with us. Follow us on Instagram at Goodtaste